Good afternoon, Year 5. Welcome to this afternoon's science lesson. Our topic for this term is all about animals, including humans, and human development. So this afternoon we are looking at the human timeline. So today is Tuesday, it's the 23rd of February, and we are describing the stages of human development. So we should be able to order the stages of human development, name the 6 stages of human development, and explain some of the changes that occur during each stage of development. So let's have a little look. Have a little think about what the human life cycle is. How do you think the human life cycle works? Where does it start? Where does it finish, etc.? What do you think? Okay, absolutely. So it starts when we are born, or that's where you've probably kind of started. And of course, we live our life, we grow up into toddlers, into children, into teenagers, into young adults, middle-aged, old, and then ultimately life comes to an end, doesn't it? But is there anything that happens before we are babies? Do we just appear? Do we come from an egg? Does mum lay an egg? Where do we come from? Is that where it all just starts, from just being born, or are we alive before we are born? And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. Okay, so there are different types of reproduction. We're not going to draw too much on this, but it is important to know how new life starts. So we have got 2 different types of reproduction. We have got asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction, and then we have got some animals that can, and plants that can reproduce using both sexual and asexual reproduction. So let's look at asexual first. So asexual is where one life reproduces a new life. So this usually happens in plants. Okay, and this means that one cell simply starts to divide itself, and all cells of the offspring are identical to the parent. So this means that it is a clone of the parent. So it's where essentially a plant or something similar, like a mold, that sort of thing, separates into many different parts, and therefore identical life is formed. Okay, we have sexual reproduction, where 2 parents, a male and a female, are required to produce new life. Okay, so for this to happen, it requires a male reproductive cell and a female reproductive cell, and the male needs to fertilize the female's reproductive cell, which is an egg. Okay, so the fusion of those means that the offspring will resemble both, but is not identical to either. So we are similar to our parents, we have similarities to our parents, but we are not identical to them. Okay, and this is the same in animals. Okay, so you might find when a kitten is born, for example, it might have similarities to mum and to dad, but it won't be identical to either of them. Okay, and then finally we have got both sexual and asexual reproduction, which means that they can have either 1 or 2 parents. So some living things have the capacity to reproduce in either of the ways that I've explained before. So moving on, let's have a little look. I won't get you to sort them, we will just talk through the ones that are here. So asexual reproduction, these are the ones that replicate. They essentially split off into new parts. Okay, so we've got bacteria, and that's how things like viruses are spread. We have got fungi, so things like mushrooms and mold. We have got stick insects, so they just break parts of themselves off, and that's how they reproduce. And we have got, I can't actually see what that is, but a small green bug there. We've got sexual reproduction, so this is where a male and a female are needed. So we've got flowers. There are male and female parts to the inside of the plant. Both of those are needed to produce seeds. We have got lions, we have got seahorses, we have got salmon, we have got a seal, and we have got humans. Okay, so for those 6, and amongst lots of others, a mum and a dad are required to produce a child. Okay. And then we have got some others that are both sexual and asexual. So we've got a queen bumblebee. Okay, so she can produce a new queen bumblebee by herself. We have got strawberries, and we have got, I think that says a beetle star, although I'm not sure, it's very, very small and I can't quite read it. Okay, but we have got some different life forms that come, some from having only one parent, so to speak, from having 2 parents, a male and a female, to reproduce. And then in the final grid, these ones can be both of the first 2, if that makes sense. So moving on nice and quickly from there. There are some different ways to study human growth, okay, and we tend to look at this physically, emotionally, socially, and psychologically. Okay, so physically, how do we actually grow? How do we grow and change? Emotionally, how do our emotions grow and change? We become much more emotionally capable, let's say. When we're babies, we tend to just cry to get the things that we need, whereas as we grow, we are able to explain and express our needs, aren't we? Socially, our social skills develop, we understand how to interact with people differently, and psychological means our brain and our mind. So in science, the focus is on the stages of human growth, so the development that we have physically, our physical changes, okay, and these are the stages that we are going to learn about. We're going to learn about the major changes that take place. So we have the very first stage is the prenatal stage. So this is before we are actually born. Okay, so we are living before we're actually born. Okay, so this stage of development is from the time of fertilization. So we essentially have a seed that fertilizes an egg. Okay, and that's what's happening here. Okay, we've got this seed with the tail, and this circle bit is the egg. Okay, and once that fertilizes, we then have a baby beginning to grow, and the baby grows in a sac, like you can see, and you can see how that baby changes, and you can see there's a little tube here, which is the umbilical cord, and that's how the baby is fed. Okay, so the umbilical cord is attached to mum and attached to baby and is fed through there, and that's why it grows so nicely. And here is baby sitting in mum's womb, in mum's tummy. Okay, so that is the prenatal stage. Okay, and babies tend to, on average, stay inside mum's tummy for 39 weeks old. 39 weeks, sorry, before they are born. We then have, of course, infancy. So when they are babies until they are about 2 years old. So this includes babies and toddlers. Okay. The rate of the physical development is fast at this stage. Infants are totally dependent on others for food. I can't see the bottom of that. For food and care. I do apologise if you can hear Coda and Willow in the background. They're going a bit wild. So let's have a click on here. This is a rough timeline of infancy. So we have 1 month when they're tiny babies, 2 months they begin to kind of roll on their tummy, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months are all relatively similar, although 5 months we've got baby sitting up. 6 months is when they say we can start to wean them, we can start to feed them solid food. 7 months they're rolling over. 8 months we've got teeth. Teeth do sometimes come before 8 months. 9 months we've got some crawling, and you can see how that baby is changing and growing, can't you? Then we have got childhood. So this stage takes place between the ages of 3 and 10. So us in year 5, we are still classed as children at the moment. Okay, the physical growth is much more steady, it's not as obvious. We don't tend to see the changes month by month like we do with toddlers and babies, but more kind of as the years go on, we start to see your changes a little bit easier, don't we? Okay, children are usually able to feed themselves. They can take increasing care of themselves and their own important physical needs. So you guys probably don't need too much help having a bath. Okay, you might need a bit of help washing your hair, but generally speaking, the rest of that you are able to do yourself. Okay, you probably don't need somebody to brush your teeth for you. You might need mum to cook your dinner for you, but you don't need mum to feed you, for example. Okay, there is, however, although there's not considerable amount of change within a year or month on month for children, there is a lot of development going on in the brain. Okay, so let's have a look at the rough timeline. So we've got 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. You can see the growth is quite significant, but actually, and like there's not that much difference between each individual year. When you look at the 10-year-old in comparison to the 3-year-old, there is, but actually between the 3-year-old and the 4-year-old, not so much. Here they come. I apologise. Oh, I can't get off of there now. There we go. Then we have adolescence after childhood. Okay, so the World Health Organization, again, I apologise, defines an adolescent as being a young person aged between 10 and 19. So we're almost there, guys. Okay, puberty results in changes in the body. Boys' bodies start to change from around the age of 12, but it can be earlier or later. Girls' bodies tend to start changing from about the age of 9, but again, it could be earlier or later. So some of you might have already seen some changes start to happen, but the majority of you probably haven't yet. And that's okay. It happens when it happens. We have no control over that. Okay, so the changes don't all come at once. They happen over a few years, and these changes can occur to enable reproduction during adulthood. Okay, adolescents again are increasingly independent. So again, as you get older, you begin to maybe make your own lunch, make your own breakfast. You're able to get yourself a drink. You do more things by yourself. Okay, and there is even more brain development. Okay, after that we have early adulthood. So we start this from about age 18, and that goes on till age 39. Okay, so the human body is at its peak of its fitness and strength. There's still some growth, but not so much in height. Okay, so this is usually the age where most humans choose to reproduce. Some people wait a little bit longer, and that's okay. But this is generally, on average, where most people choose to have their children. So humans are able to take care of their physical needs completely and independently. Okay, and again, that is generally speaking. Of course, some people might need a little bit of help. Middle adulthood. This stage of development takes place between the age of 40 and 59 years of age. Both male and female ability to reproduce begins to decline with age. Women experience what is called menopause in their 40s or 50s, which means they can't produce eggs anymore. Physical changes can include loss of hair among men and the greying of hair for men and women. And then finally, we have got late adulthood or old age. So this is the last stage of human development, and it takes place after the age of 60. So there's no physical growth, although mental development is possible. Okay, we tend to find that the body declines in fitness and health. You might find that your grandparents are not as fit as your parents. So you might find that dad's quite happy to come out and play football with you for a bit of a longer time than maybe granddad is. Okay. Some older people can become more fragile. You might find that you tend to see older people with walking sticks and things like that, and that might be where they are not as physically able anymore. This can sometimes result in increasing dependency on others to care for them. Okay, and then the end of human life, of course, is when a human dies. However, this doesn't always happen in old age. And it can be the reasoning for it can depend on the person. Okay, so that's not to say that everybody dies once they're old, but generally speaking, we are a fetus, we are then a baby, we are then a child, we are then an adolescent, we are then a young adult, a middle-aged adult, an old adult, and then that is where our life cycle kind of tends to end. So your task, and you have got a choice: bronze, silver or gold. They are very, very similar, but you have got a timeline and you need to match the ages with the pictures onto the timeline. So a nice and simple one for you today. And that is all from me. So have a lovely rest of the day, and have well, that's it really. Just have a lovely rest of the day. See you later.